G'day. It's time to down your unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Art of War Down Under. I got a freaking idea with which number this one is going to be, because I'm just going to put these guys out as I need while I'm away. I'm just going to do a big old scheduling of events before I head off overseas. Now, this is a very awesome episode because the two gentlemen joining me are also going to be joining me on stream at WTC. They are, of course, they're probably gentlemen you haven't heard of. They've never done anything really significant in the scene. Bunch of like NHOs, if you ever did, ever actually really did figure it out. But, they're from a little country that's done some stuff. I guess they got a couple of accolades at the WTC level, But it's Pumba and Typhus from Poland. Hello, boys. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Adam. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for this opportunity. It will be great to actually get to be known by the community.
Exactly
right.
First time appearance, stuff like that,
We're doing you a great favor by giving the exposure, right? But of course, Pumba and Typhus, both people who have podiumed, represented Poland, and won the WTC. So they're two gentlemen who have played the game at the absolute highest level for many years. And Pumba captaining Team Poland for the last couple of years, resulting in a first place and a third place at a minimum. And this episode is going to be a stats episode on the WTC meta. We're going to be talking about it in great detail, going through every single army faction, telling you how many of each is represented in the field, in addition to then breaking down the smaller subset, which is the Seed 1 teams, so the teams that over the past 5 years have shown that they are, top 10 quality teams. But gentlemen, hot takes, or better than that, where's my Enter the Matrix? What the crap?
Oh, that's a great question, Adam, because right when we are recording this, the first episode of the new Enter the Matrix is just airing right now, with the new set of hosts, which are Liam VSL, which as one of the best players in the entire world from...
No, never heard of him either. No.
Along with Brian Sipe and Nassim Fushain, with Pass the Baton to them, as we are quite burned out still by 40k in general, but they are up and running. They've replaced us as host of Enter the Matrix and officially joined the stat check, although unofficially they've been a part of it for a long time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I think they will be great.
Yep, I think those
banter between Nas and Brian will be lovely to listen to. I'm just wondering how fast they will get cancelled because of Nassim, but that's one thing.
Nassim, yeah.
Go catch them. Editor. Go catch them as they are broadcasting their first episode right now. So when this episode airs, they should at least have a couple of episodes, or at least one episode out already.
Fantastic. Now, both you boys are joining me and Joe on the stream for the WTC, where you boys will essentially be the guys giving us the in the field analytics, which is something it's really hard to do. It's really hard to for me, sitting there just looking at the stats, or Joe, just to be like, wow, I really freaking wish I could get the story from that game. Those results are really surprising, So say it's just the game we're not able to get on stream, but it's the one that everyone's interested in. And you boys you guys have your finger on the pulse, the WTC meta, like, no one else. And so it's going to be really awesome to have you guys along. So hopefully everybody at home is really excited about that. And over on part 2, of course, catch us on Patreon, Art of War Down Under. You'll get another full chunk of time with myself and these two absolutely wonderful gentlemen. But hot takes, start with you, Typhus. The WTC meta for this year, how does it stack up against metas of previous WTC years recently?
To be fair, it's definitely better than 23. But when you compare it to 24, it feels kind of flat. And I think we will see it when we will be talking about the factions. Coming back from a year like last year where we could consider so many factions, so many detachments. Weirdly enough, we got more factions and detachments this year available to the players, but somehow the game feels like there's less choice. And like the Knights getting those changes, it will be like 2 weeks before, I think forced us into a very stat checky meta where you need to play around one specific defensive profile, which causes the teams to fully dedicate themselves to it, which makes the game always more flat whenever a strong stat check is included in the meta.
100% agree. What about yourself, Pumba?
I generally agree. I think if WTC happened 2 months ago, for example, that would have been the best WTC we could have ever had, because the meta was just so incredible, so open. There has been so much choice. And then, unfortunately, some things happened. Some things being, I think, Death Guard coming out, being as what they are, and kind of locking in one faction of the 8 almost for every single team at the event, as we will see. And then the nice changes, forcing everybody, as Typhus said, into the stat checking meta that they are now. It again became a meta of haves and have-nots, which is a little bit unfortunate. But I think the other side of the coin is, although the Knights are super good, I think that also means that, of course, as always, before WTC, teams have really low amounts of time to figure out like the answers, the team compositions, the meta after the changes happen, and it will actually the absolute mayhem that ensued will mean that there will be some teams that either took Knights or didn't take them, or maybe they went over the board with like, maybe we don't need them, but we will counter the counters, as we will see in like the team compositions. So there is definitely a place and there's the space to cook still, but comparatively to 2 months ago, less so than it would have been, I feel like.
Yeah. So to just paraphrase that back for everybody, when this has happened in many WTC metas previously. I think 2023 pointed out by Pumba was a perfect example, when it was overwhelmingly Wraith Knights and Eldar was the best army in the game. It was the first it was the index edition of the game, and it narrowed the meta so hard and so thoroughly into what could and could not function in that meta, what could and could not contest and get a differential, that the game narrowed. It's almost like you put blinkers on and had to literally just discard so many factions from the periphery of what could and couldn't function in that environment, where last year was the opposite. There was no super defining, subset of armies or profiles that resulted in that narrowing, that kind of cutting of the chaff. Stupendous things occurred last year, and this year it's weird because it's nowhere near as bad as previous metas we've had where this kind of thing has occurred, but it still feels jarring because it happened so quickly before the event. Was that safe to say, Typhus?
Yeah, I think the main thing when we compare it to, like, say, last year's event, the balanced data slate dropped, like, what was it, mid-June? And it impacted the game massively. This year, we also had that slate somewhere in June, but that one didn't feel as impactful to the game, at least according to me. And then we had a nice change, which was, like, 2 weeks before the last list submission. So I want to reinforce what Pumba said, that compared to some of the previous years, like new edition or new data slate, people actually had less time to figure out their team comps this year than those last years. So I think what Pumba mentioned, people about overcooking, whether they actually have good counters or if their counter tonight works against, say, a night list that has free the spoilers with Gatling cannons, suddenly it might not work, etc. There's a lot more in play because people didn't have more time to settle on what might be the correct solution.
Other thing I want to point out is that in the 2 months before, so in the 6 weeks almost before list cutoff and rules cutoff, we had World Eaters, Thousand Suns, Death Guard, both Knights. We had essentially, 5 factions, got their codex all revamped in the case of Knights, plus new missions and the slate and MFM. This is almost as big a change and a big injection of new content into the game And second only to things like a new edition. This is second only to a new edition for how much change we saw in like the short time before the rules cut off and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it's going to be super exciting to see who's got the silver bullets, essentially, who's packing the right answers to the meta and who is correct in their assumptions about what other people are bringing. But without further ado, we're going to jump into what people did bring. So there's 336 players in the WTC, which is 42 national teams of 8, one of those being the UN team, which is a conglomerate team made up to fill out the numbers, because there's 41 national teams. And then, of course, we've got the Gumby team. Over 7 rounds. Starting from the top, we have 7 Sisters of Battle. So no Imperial Agents, because they're all in the freaking Imperial Knights list. 3 Adeptus Custodes, 3 Adeptus Mechanicus, 15 Astra Militarum, and 3 Grey Knights. And then 28 Imperial Knights. That's for the Imperial Super Faction. Over into the Space Marines breakdown, we have 3 Adeptus Astartes, 2 Dark Angels, 13 Space Wolves, 15 Blood Angels, 2 Templars, and 1 Death Watch. Chaos consists of 12 Chaos Space Marines, 28,000 Suns, 40 Death Guard, 9 World Eaters, 7 Emperor's Children, 12 Demons, 29 Chaos Knights. Xenos is 24 Necrons, 5 Orcs, 4 Tau, and 16 Votan. Hive Mind, 15 Tyrannids, and almost as many Tyrannids as GSC, with 13 GSC. So other way around. And Eldari is 6 Eldari and 6 Drakari and 20 Eldari. And of course, you can only have 42 possible players playing each faction. If that gives anybody an idea at home, because there's only 42 teams, so you can have 42 possible of anything, because you can't double up on any faction. So Death Guard, of course, in pole position with 40 total teams having taken Death Guard. And do we know who didn't take Death Guard, boys?
That would be South Africa and Slovenia, I believe.
I think it's 2 seed 4 teams, basically.
Yeah. Still ballers. Good for them. And then we have a seed 1 team that didn't take Space Marines. How many total Astartes are there, if you guys know off the top of your head?
Let me check.
I think it's
35?
I think it's 35
or 36.
7 are missing it, so that would be
35.
35, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Of the seed 1 teams, England didn't take Adeptus Astartes, which is very interesting. What jumps out to you guys about this faction breakdown?
So, as I've said previously, Death Guard are in the pole position. They basically came in and filled out one of the slots in the army right away.
Auto-populated. Yeah, auto-populated into everybody's team. No choice.
Exactly. So, like, you've got 7 choices left. And I think then came the decision to pick specific Space Marine faction. And I am actually astounded that Space Wolves are as popular as they are. We have not seen them at an event, because the Codex technically wasn't playable at most events so far. So it's quite interesting to see so many teams, especially in Tier 1, just gravitating towards it. That means that the Codex is especially strong, but we haven't seen it in practice. But teams in their testing have decided that they are the default Space Marines. And I think Knights have a big impact here, actually.
Yeah. So I find the Space Wolves so exciting, because that is essentially a behind closed doors testing and preparation process, because nothing that the Space Wolves are bringing in their codex could have been played. Like, you can't play new Logan, you can't play new Bjorn or Arjak or the new Terminator. You can't proxy anything and go to a GT or a super major and see if it works in the wild. Everything that they've done to prep their Space Wolves has been done behind closed doors, every bit of testing. And so that's super exciting to me, because we get to see 100% of their belief in that faction and that player just take place in the pressure cooker on the day. And I think chef's kiss, love it. Can't wait to see who was correct and who wasn't. So keep going, Pumba.
Then, of course, when you're building your team composition in the current environment, you need to decide on the amounts of knights you would like to take. We all know at this point that both of the variants are extremely strong. And now the question becomes, are you taking 0, 1, or both of them? And the vast majority of teams decided to take at least 1. Among the Tier 1 teams, 8, am I correct? I think 8 out of them took both variants.
Sweden has only Chaos Knights.
Yes,
I know.
And then
the one we all
stands
thought.
out the most out.
The one we all thought would do both did one.
That was when the list came out. That was my biggest surprise, as I've told everybody. That Swedish only took one of them after. Like, if I had to bet with someone that the Swedes this year are going to take double knights, I would take that bet every day of the week.
They juked us.
I am extremely surprised that they didn't.
They freaking juked us. Last year was just a psyops, boys. It was just a psyops. That's it.
Clearly. They've done it again.
Typhus, what are you seeing here of interest? What jumps out to you?
I think one thing that really stands out to me is actually Awakened Dynasty.
Oh, that's so true.
That's an army that really came out of the left field. People were already talking about it, but it feels like an army that specifically doesn't see much play in singles. It is so polarized that if you see those Blood Angel armies, you are just dead. Like you cannot play that matchup, right? Yeah. So those armies will not be played in a singles environment. But here they excel, especially in like a knight meta. Turns out some knight versions cannot just handle with 20 Necron warriors. Yeah. And suddenly they find a niche. And there's like even more impact of that because suddenly Eldar became very popular again.
Correct.
Because knights are popular and Eldar can be good into knights. So suddenly we can even talk about Awakened Dynasty being good into Eldar. And there's few factions that weren't at the very top that became very popular of what is popular at the top. And this is something that we find quite often at WTCs and those big team events that there are some obvious counters for something that is very popular in the meta.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you say about Awakened Dynasty because you're right. Awakened Dynasty has always been an amazing army, completely unfun for anybody who plays against it. It's boring as absolute shit. It's pretty much the bus stop list archetype from 9th edition, just whether you want to take it in single wound form or in multi-wound form, depending on which way you want to go with it. But yeah, it just in singles in big GTs environments, it just loses to a random freaking orc list. Gets run over. We're going second versus orcs or something, or gets embodied by some weird demon conglomerate or some other Blood Angels or super ultra aggressive army. But then in this meta, it seems to be the best blunter available to the top of the meta. I mean, it's also got quite a strong matchup into Death Guard as well on a bunch of different, a little bit depending on the Death Guard list. But a couple of the Mortarian's Anvil lists just have no solution to 18 race or 40 Necron warriors. There's got nothing for it, and so you find that they're an incredibly good predator to at least the top 3, and then some of the lesser represented factions as well. So I'm right there with you, Typhus. What's your next interesting talking point?
I would actually say I'm quite surprised by the amount of Eldari that they're represented. I think it is quite obvious to me why that happened, as they are the default solution to your knights if you want to counter them specifically. I am really wondering how well they are going to do, because I do feel like if they don't hit some specific matchups, that army will have polarized matrices. Correct. As in, they will, if they find the counters that they are prepared for, if they find their prey, they will be excellent. But if the opponent decides to sacrifice some of their own assets to prey on your Eldar, you might find them in a situation similar to what happened to France last year. Even though they won the event, their Eldar were sacrificed every single round of the event, for example.
Yeah. For the betterment of the rest of the lineup. And 100% that might be the case, because surprisingly, or unsurprising to many, when the game took a right turn about 2 months ago, away from the Eldar matchup, and then the things that were really able to predator Eldar also got like a backhanded nerf. But then people flocked back to Eldar's 20, almost half the teams of representation have taken Eldari in their lineup, and then 6 have taken Drakari also. So I do know I think there's 2 teams that took Drakari and Eldari. I think there's one team in the top seed that did so. Is it?
It's Germany. No, Germany does. Germany. Yeah, Germany. Germany has both.
Yeah. What a freaking choice, and I love it because I think Germany's going to do really well. But the other things that things like Emperor's Children. Emperor's Children was thriving in the Eldari or Ynnari meta, just a couple of months ago. And then the game just took a right angle away from them. Now, what I thought that was going to result in is a higher distribution of World Eaters and Chaos Space Marine players, because I thought the Emperor's Children players would be flocking back to those. But it didn't really happen. It seems they all went to either T-Sun's Death Guard or even elsewhere. Were you guys surprised about the EC numbers?
Not really. I think that the general EC, I think EC are incredibly strong still, but they need a very dedicated expert pilot that knows exactly how each matchup is played, and they are extremely versed on the faction. A great example, of course, here would be John Lennon, who is the only Tier 1 player that decided to take Emperor's Children to the event. But the default choice would be dropping off of them to go elsewhere for your answers. I think EC, you're like basic EC player, and if we are talking basic EC players out of Tier 1 teams at WTC, the level is just off the charts. But still, even at that level, I think a lot of players that would have been on EC will still struggle into some of the matchups that the meta offers right now.
My issue is, if you are working on the assumption that a lot of good teams are going to have 1 to 2 knights, everyone's going to have Death Guard, and then there's a theoretical possibility that they play a predatory Space Marine faction as well. You've got 4 yellows to reds in your matrix already, and then you have to ask yourself, can you take that faction? Is it not just a liability to have in your lineup? Sorry, Typhus.
Yeah, but to add a little bit more, we are talking about top factions that EC might struggle, obviously.
Yeah,
but weirdly enough, those factions that we mentioned that pop up to counter those top factions, being the Awakened or Eldar,
correct,
something else, EC are really good into. So, like, it all becomes like the rock, paper, scissors game, where it depends how you define your team comp and how you define how you will want to pair the whole round.
Yeah,
I was in talks with Poland, and Poland was also considering EC as a counter into Knights counters.
Yeah,
to prey on some of the armies that will be
Australia,
and you can use it in your pairings.
Australia literally did a boot camp before list submission, and going into that boot camp, they had an Emperor's Children player, and then on the way out of that boot camp, no longer an Emperor's Children player. So like the weekend or the week before, I can't remember if it might have been the week before list submission. Yeah, they were all the way up until that we were locked in on EC.
That makes sense.
For that exact reason. If everybody's countering knights, the 3 or 4 things that counter knights, EC bully. EC could get 20 feasting on those things. But yeah, also that is the risk of Emperor's Children as well, because it seemed like into this meta, they were either going to get 15 plus or 5 or less, which is a big risk reward proposition for a lot of the Seed 1 teams, especially because you can just lose a round off that flip. 2 other factions I wanted to mention. So the game is, and I'm doing this because they're in the same boat as Emperor's Children. These are ones that have been squashed because they've either been superseded by armies that have the same role but do it better, or they're things that are ultra predated by the things people are taking to beat those. And that's Custodians and Grey Knights, which prior to the Knights, I thought were both in a relatively good position. Grey Knights a little bit more in my estimation than Custodians. I thought Grey Knights had a really good matrix at the moment with not as strong a greens, but like yellows for freaking days with massive upsides. Whereas Custodians and Grey Knights are both armies that are getting, I call it getting squashed in the press, as in the mix of the meta where people are trying to find counters for, like Death Guard Terminators, and essentially Death Guard has superseded Custodians that just doing everything Custodians do, but better for cheaper. And everybody who's trying to beat Death Guard and or Knights have extremely, extremely good profiles into Custodians and Grey Knights. And so they just kind of don't make the cut. Does that make sense to you boys? And is that what you see also?
Yes, perfectly said, actually. I think especially the addition of, because they don't fit into neither of the 3 slots that we were talking about, right? When we were talking about meta narrowing, we were talking about either you are Knights, you can counter Knights, or you counter the counters.
Yeah. And
I feel like both Grey Knights and Custodians don't fall into neither of those 3 buckets. And as you've described it, they actually can be preyed upon from all of these sides, if you think
all angles, mate. It's rough. Is there any other faction that you guys can identify? I'll start with you, Typhus, that you can identify that are in a similar position, like 6 weeks or 2 months ago would have been, considered for every 8-player team, and now just like on the cutting room floor, no chance.
Demons.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good example that was floating around. The Shadow Legion was very, very popular, especially in the more Daka days, but now it dropped from the face of the earth. In Seed 1, I think only Niklas Frischen is actually playing them, right?
Yeah,
That
so
is
there's 12 demons in total at the event, and yeah, I would have expected freaking double that, 2 months ago, easily.
Yeah, and suddenly they dropped off because, well, they are not so well equipped into killing big things, right? And even if you charge a knight, it will fight on death, and the Bloodthirster might be gone, and it's not great.
Yeah, correct. And in addition, like a lot more Atropos, a lot more Infernal Lance to have an Invuln and a Feel No Pain versus, let's say, the Fade Thirster. And then, all of a sudden, what do you have that kills a knight if he doesn't? If he can't do it, what do you have? And yeah, you're right. The other thing to consider is, and I've already interviewed Team Australia. We actually had a little chat about this, and they said this verbatim. Because of how good Chaos Knights are, would you rather take a 100% strength Chaos Knights player who has the ability to flex and take any little bit of utility that they can from demons, or would you rather compromise both and have a full demon player and a full Chaos Knights player? Or because the fact that Chaos Knights were so good and because it was likely they were taking demons, you as a team didn't develop or encourage any player to play demons with full agency?
I think that's completely a valid point as well. I also feel like because, especially at the start, I think actually Chaos Knights had a quite interesting development process. I think a lot of people started their Chaos Knights lists, especially at the beginning of the Codex, with demons in them. There might have been not enough time to switch off of them. Correct. When it turns out like Infernal Lance might be the actual choice instead of Lords of Dread. So I think there was a time of development where demons were more popular. But they just either gravitated towards taking them into the Chaos Knights or even CSM in some cases.
I need to go back in time. I need to go back through my last couple of weeks of content, because I said on one of my shows, probably about a month ago now, that Infernal Lance was secretly the best big knight detachment for Chaos Knights, and I'm so freaking vindicated, because every time you say crap like that as someone who's not going and not playing, you're like, oh, I might look like a dickhead for this one, but absolutely justified. Typhus, why do you think people have gone away from Lords of Dread for the Infernal Lance?
I think it's mostly about what Infernal Lance gives you and not what Lords of Dread doesn't give you. And obviously there's the fact that you can give invulnerable save to any knight. But what I found when I was watching the games at Pyracamp is that the +3 movement creates so many more obnoxious shooting lanes that you didn't account for, that it's crazy. Like, I've seen turn ones from Infernal Lance players that were just vomit-inducing. And I think that's mostly the fact that in any faction that you can boost your movement by a significant amount, even 3 inches, it means that opponent has to account for it all the time. So suddenly you're even more limiting into your opponent playstyle. And then you do not have to use it, because they will play around it, but then you can use the other buffs from Infernal Lance to your advantage.
It's pseudo assault and or pseudo advance and charge, depending on how you want to wield it. And you're right, it's so powerful. So WTC tables have no deployment zone to deployment zone lines of sight, not one single one that is very, really viable to use. They're all adjacent to your deployment zone. They're all just a little bit out of reach. But when you have +3 inch move on knights going through walls on big knights, all those firing lanes are on tap, on demand. You can threaten your opponent's expansion so freely, so easily from long range. And that's what I identified early on with Infernal Lance, just having a bit more pressure agency.
And I think what's worth mentioning here for any listeners that are not super familiar with WTC terrain packs, when you compare WTC pack to, say, GW or UKTC, nearly every WTC terrain set has those small lips on the outer side of the ruin, which means that you can just tow into it and shoot inside. When you
Correct.
think about UKTC, you have those terrains that you cannot tow in as a knight, or on GW you have those big boxes that you also cannot tow in. So suddenly it means that some of the terrain that you are used to in your maybe terrain set is not translating to WTC at all for knights. So we might see knights being stronger at WTC than they would be on, say, the other events.
Yeah, well said. Two more factions I want to talk about before we start focusing in on the Seed 1. Did you guys have much of a read on Tau? I would not have been surprised if some wild stallions in the backfield had brewed up like some ultra powerful Tau build that goes into this meta well. And I was like, I've no idea what it is. I have no idea what it could be, but I would not be surprised if, by the time the event happens, I look at a couple of Tau builds and be like, holy crap, that's terrifying. Did you guys believe that was a possibility? Because we only have 4 Tau players, 4 Tau armies in the entire field, in the entire 336 players.
So I believe Tau are suffering from the issue where their baseline power isn't super high. And whilst they might cook up a build that theoretically is good into the meta and theoretically counters it, you might find yourself in a position where that is only the case if the Knights player rolls their 4-ups statistically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a huge problem. Yeah, that's a huge problem. If I think in general, when we are talking Tau, we might mention that it's a wider trend, I believe, where Knights are an army that is a stat check, but they also are an army akin to Custodes. If your opponent, they are an army that relies heavily on invent saves in most of the games. And if your Knight's opponent overrolls on them, the benefits might be soul crushing to you. And I think a lot of counters that are theoretically good into them might fall over and just literally die the moment that one big Knight that is offensively placed for your opponent rolls too many 4-ups. And right. I think Tau are exactly an army that you line up all of your railguns and big shooting into that Knight. He rolls that too many 4-ups, and then suddenly he literally clears your army straight up.
You have no recourse. Yeah,
exactly. So that I believe that is the case where Tau baseline isn't super good into the much else in the meta. They might struggle with Death Guard, I believe. Even like the 3 PBCs might tear through most of their stuff. I think their general baseline power is quite low. And the theory is that you might cook up a build where it can deal with Knights, but are you willing to take those odds where you position them into their green matchup and suddenly they come out with a 0 because someone just rolled well?
So the other thing I will say... Sorry, go Typhus.
There's one more thing to account for when we're even talking about those factions, which is very WTC specific if you're fighting for a very high spot. But on Sunday, you're playing to search and destroys.
Yes.
So what it means, if you are playing an army that is very susceptible to being rushed, even if an opponent just jailing you, say like GSC, then suddenly the fact that on Sunday you're playing probably the most important matches is a big problem if you are taking a faction that is so reliant on singular dice rolls. And Tau might be one of those factions as well.
Last thing I'll mention on Tau is that when I was looking down theoretically, because I did a little bit of a deep dive into like what would I take if I was Tau, because I've been a gunline player at the WTC for a couple of years.
Disgusting.
And like I know. Hey, you don't say such nasty things about Skark. He's a good boy. But yeah, I went down that rabbit hole to just see like what would they have Brang, and I came up with a list that looked it's like triple Riptide, triple Skyray, 1 to 2 hammerheads, and still had to take 1 to 2 Devilfish. And then I looked at the deployment zones of like what I was likely to be playing on. And I'm like, people didn't take a second freaking Wave Serpent because it didn't play good on the tables. How the hell am I going to like stomach going to my team and saying I'm taking 6+ Devilfish freaking chassis and thinking I'm not going to get blown up if I go second against another gun line? And so that is also a big deal for Tau. Especially when we talk about the Chaos Knight matchup, when they can just go like, the spoilers, 3 walls into the angles, two Sky Rays dead, game's over. You no longer have the ability to threaten to dunk two knights in a turn, and the game's actually finished. Well said, everybody. Any other factions before we move on to the Seed 1 teams, boys? Any other factions we want to speak to?
I think the Fall of Guard is quite interesting. I think it is another faction that just it has fallen because of the because of the Knights meta specifically. But I'm at the same time extremely, when we are talking about tier 1 teams, there's one guard list that is extremely interesting to me. That is either going to be the best list at the event or the worst list at the event, and we'll find out after WTC happens, of course. But overall, I feel like Guard is in a rough spot, especially when we are comparing it to the spot that they held for many months before the changes.
Correct. And many years. Like for the entirety of the edition, I think Guard has held its place as the most viable gun line in teams, as in the most flexible one, the one that will have the best floor on its score. Like even if you enter a red, you'll get better points than many other gun lines into a bad matchup, and then you can push even further into good matchups because you just have the ability to contest and hold your opponent's primary down more freely by slinging potentially 30 OC from 10 idiots out of a Taurox. Whereas now they're kind of superseded in their role by Votann. I mean, if I was going to take a gun line into the meta at the moment, 100% it's going to be Votann. And so either you're taking a second pure gun line or you're looking for something with X Factor. And I love that you pointed out the Seed 1 team with it. So let's look at those Seed 1 teams, guys. So this is the top 10 ranked teams of the last 5 years of the WTC, essentially. That's how you get them to be tier 1 on your average.
It's actually 3 years.
It's 3 now.
Yeah, it's weighted. So it's 50% last year's score, 30% 2 years ago, and 20% 3 years ago. So Stunning. It is rolling over 3 years.
And so the Seed 1 factions for this year are Austria, Sweden, Netherlands, Spain, Australia, Germany, Poland, England, the United States, and France, of course, who won it the whole shebang last year. So those are the 10 essentially top seeded teams in the event. They have brought 2 Sisters of Battle. So this is how many teams brought Sisters of Battle. 1 brought Adeptus Mechanicus. It's Poland. You guys are doing it again. You did it last year. You're like, we loved it so much, we're going to do it again. 2 Astra Militarum, 7 Imperial Knights, 6 Space Wolves, 3 Blood Angels, so 9 out of the 10, of course, with England not taking Adeptus Astartes, 5 Chaos Space Marines, 6,000 Suns, 10 Death Guard, so everybody in Seed 1 took Death Guard, 3 World Eaters, 1 Emperor's Children, John Lennon, 1 Demon, 8 Chaos Knights, 5 Necrons, single Orc, which is in Spain, and the list is hilarious. 6 Votann, 1 Tyrannids, 2 Genestealer Cult, 3 Drakari, and 7 Eldari. Boys, what do we see here? What's worth talking about?
So the biggest surprise in general to me is quite a low amount of GSC. I was really in opinion that GSC were going to be more popular in Seed 1 than they are we would be anywhere else, and it has not come out to be true.
I had this belief that because GSC has been worth taking to WTC probably for the last 2 years. So they were probably worth taking last year as well if you had the player. But because there's such a unique rule set that requires specialization and dedication from a pilot, I thought everyone was psyopsing each other and secretly building a GSC monster player in the background and just not talking about it. And I actually assumed everyone was doing it. And apparently not. Apparently no. Still, you have to be a good player with GSC already to be worth the taking to WTC, because apparently no one's willing to try and build a player on the team. Does that surprise you as well, Typhus?
With GSC, there's one thing that I just mentioned before about the search and destroy on the last day. GSC is a good army, but sometimes even the army that is supposed to lose to GSC, like Eldar, it can just go first and rush it. And suddenly GSC, now with only 6-inch deep strike and not 3-inch deep strike, might end up in a position that they cannot actually go onto the board in a meaningful way, and suddenly, by just losing 1 roll in a matchup that's supposed to be good, lose it 20-0. which I think might be a sole reason why some teams would decide to not take it. And I think that's perfectly viable.
I mean, the guard list we're joking about, it's a recon element guard list, which has got 150 bodies. That's what you're talking about, Pumba?
Yes, of course. Like that recon element guard is either going to score straight 20s all the weekend, all the event, or is going to come across those fuel melee lists that can just literally tear it a new one in a matter of 2 to 3 turns.
If only we could get the 80 Berserker World Eaters versus the 150 Guardsmen on stream at some point. But no, it's never going to happen.
It will be hard because they are on the same team. That's
exactly right. It's never going to happen.
They're quite difficult to manage.
Difficult. I do want to ask them if they played the matchup, though. I need to know. I need to know how many Guardsmen died to Khan's unit in one turn, because I'm of the opinion it's as many as they could come into contact with.
I think the answer is yes.
Yes. All right. So, talking points. No Marines in England. They're the only team in the Seed 1 who did not take Adeptus Astartes. Looking at their lineup, boys, can you see a reason why they didn't take Adeptus Astartes?
No. I think it's a mistake. A mistake is such a harsh word to use, because when you are building an 8-man team, there's so many factors that you need to account for. I don't think there is if you had a player for it, there is no way you wouldn't take any Space Marines instead of any other faction, especially with so many variants being legitimately very strong. So I think the only reason not to do it is because you have specific things in mind in terms of the rest of your team composition, or you don't want to push any player that already is in the team into something that he is uncomfortable with. And both of the reasons can be valid in that sense. But in an ideal world, I think you still include Space Marines.
Yeah. The only other one I can think of is that they had a Space Marine player right up until like the last minute, and then decided their team comp desperately needed X or definitely needed Y or Z. I can't tell you what those things would be in this situation, but that's another thing that I could think of could have theoretically happened here. Anything to add, Typhus?
No, I think one thing that maybe could be the case is, I know Pumba wanted to mention this, but England is going through a rebuild year. So maybe they wanted to take their players on their comfort picks.
Yeah,
and
totally
especially that most of their team is going for the first time.
Yeah.
You want them to play something they are very familiar with and not throw them around into a newer faction that, even though Marines aren't super difficult per se, but it's better for a person that you took for your team because they play 1,000 Sons for a whole year to give them 1,000 Sons instead of moving them into Space Wars, right?
Correct. All right, so there's a couple of things that there are only singles of in the top save. So we've got singles for Adeptus Mechanicus, singles for Emperor's Children, singles for Demons, single Orc, single Tyrannid. Now, the Tyrannids one does surprise me, boys. What's your read on Tyrannids into this meta? Because they were touted, especially by some of the Fireside lads when I was on with David Gaylard. He was touting Tyrannids as one of the best teams lists in the game with the Subterranean Assault. Turns out to have not been the case either in the singles or the teams. 15 teams took them in the singles, and I'm not even sure if they're all Subterranean Assault, but I do know the one in the top seed is.
Yeah, Netherlands took them, and I think David haven't played that army in this meta, and that's why he was praising it.
I agree. I think Tyrannids are just bad in the current environment. I think if you want to learn all there is about Neds in the current environment and in current meta, I recommend you read through Sam Pope's, who is a Tyrannid mastermind out of Team USA. His header tells you everything you need to know about Tyrannids in the current environment. I believe if they were good, he would have really taken them 100% of the time. Instead, he's on GSC, and his list header is hilarious and explains in detail that the army is not in the right place right now.
I wanted to play Snake Farm, but then it was not good. The Tyranid players were right all along. The faction is bad. If 3 6-inch deep strike and 4 rerolls can't save us, nothing can. I must not Doom. Doom is the fun killer. Doom is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my Doom. I will permit it to pass through me and over me. And then when it is past, I will turn on the inner eye to see its path. Where the Doom has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. And now I play GSC and I'm going to be really bored. And my name is Sam Pope. Yep.
Hey,
I added that. I added most of that because, but yeah, you're absolutely right. So I had a funny, actually, no, I'll say this for part 2. I'll say it for part 2. But into talking about Team USA. So, in my opinion, so Team USA has top 5'd the last 3 years, I believe. And they're looking like, they really, really, really want that top 1 spot that every year, of course. They didn't take Knights. And the reigning defending champions of the world, France, did not take Knights. This is a big deal because the vast majority, and I think every other Seed 1 team took at least 1 Knight, if not 2. What do we make of it, boys? Are they wrong? Are they right? Or do we have to wait and see?
So, in terms of USA, I am not surprised at all that they didn't take Knights. I think, knowing a lot of their players, I am of the opinion that they are extremely confident that they countered them, that they are prepared for them, that this is definitely not the case where they missed something. One thing I am curious about, I am very much aware that they don't have a Knights expert on their roster. And in general, in the wider US, I think the army is underplayed and lacks the quality, like the highest quality of players. I am very much interested in the fact that if they might have missed some builds that actually play differently or do different things that they might have anticipated. I'm not saying that definitely that's the case, but it might happen, especially with the short amount of time that you have to prepare for those chunky lads coming into the meta and cooking up new builds, new solutions. As we've said, Lords of Dread were the default for a long bit of time, and then suddenly everybody's on the Infernal Lance. Did they catch that, for example, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be less polite. Pumba, you know when USA scored the least points against Poland?
That was exactly, I do remember that fondly.
Yeah, that's when counter double Knight teams.
That is true.
And you know what happened?
I do remember
one
that, yes.
Knight army rolled 1 4-up too much and they died.
That did happen, yes.
I would also like to point out Poland is not immune from this because in the Australian 2022 team...
Hey, come on.
Never mind.
100% true. The thing is, what I'm trying to essentially say is, are their counter Knight strategies bulletproof every step of the way? Will they execute them perfectly for 7 rounds? Or there will be one in like the crucial round, for example, when their designated Knights counter just fails because the Knights just rolled too many 4-ups, just something went wrong, right? Because if that happens, the entire idea and the entire plan falls over. I think what is the most interesting in terms of USA is the fact that I believe they are the team that counters the counters the most.
Yes.
They are the team with the EC and with Anthony Vanilla piloting the World Eaters, where they really might have hit the nail on the head in terms of what will people bring to counter the Knights, and we'll going to, instead of even preying on the Knights, we'll prey upon those counters, right? The third layer of what you're considering in terms of the Knight meta, that, as we discussed. I think they are the team that they've done it the best.
Well, switching tact over to the reigning defending champions in France, Typhus, what do you see in this pile? Because I think I see a hidden repeat of last year where they've secretly taken a crap load of models.
So, France historically has been either cooking to perfection or overcooking the shit out of it. Mm-hmm. And whenever I see their team comes, I don't know which version of France we will see. And this year, it feels like it might be the latter, but we'll see, because I think they like to figure out weird stuff. That's been their thing for quite some time. But as every time you play with fire, you can get burned.
Yeah.
So this might be also the case. I'm very curious, because I think out of all the top teams, they have most out their team comp, which is always beneficial in a team compositions, because people will not have enough reps into, say, your recon guard, right? They will not.
You say that, but when you're the defending champ, when you've got the target on your back, they actually do, right? It's a very different story playing in that. What
quality of a rep will it be? That's another topic.
Mm-hmm.
Because in previous years, you're absolutely correct. No one had time to prep a solution for Olivier. No one had time to prep for, innumerable other crazy things they did last year. The AC/DC bricks, for example. And so those things just ran through the meta, just ran straight over everybody. This year, when you're the reigning defending champ and everyone knows you're the team to beat, people do go out of their way and make sure they have solutions for you. And so that was definitely the case in 2023 for Team Australia also. So we will see. We will see if they're powerful enough to go back to back. Because right now, if I had to say who I think is winning, I can't. I pretty much are based on the last 12 months of results and the fact that every event that, to my knowledge, and I may be incorrect, but every event that I have seen where a team was at that event and that team name was France has won.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time for the last 12 months. Since they won the WTC, I don't think they've lost when they've represented or fielded a national team, a team under the national name. And so hard to pick against that.
I think
now there's one other team in the top seed. Go.
I would like to just mention that France is definitely the team to watch out for. They are either geniuses and they have outsmarted everybody, or they are the overcooked team composition.
Yeah, correct.
There's no in between. I think it's going to be very difficult to argue with that.
So is there another team, boys? Before we check out, we're going to do one more team and we're going to get out of here.
I'm going to go with Germany. I think Germany
had already pulled them up. I knew we were going to go for it.
Germany are in a very peculiar position, in my opinion, because they are bringing a team of faction specialists.
Correct.
And somehow they are on meta choices. That is incredible if you think about it.
So they debatably, in Germany, I don't think undebatably, they probably have the best Votan. They had the best Votan player in the world, Tim Schneider. He's probably the best Votan player in the world. He's been doing things with Votan long before anyone even knew Votan could be used to win a GT. He's on Votan. You've got the best Votan player in the world. Fred Otto, Chaos Knights champion, one of the best Chaos Knights players in the world. Oh my God, Chaos Knights are good. He just locks straight in. And you can say the same for two of their other players as well. So like four of their players are just like faction specialists, and then the meta just like 180'd and let them go from like, cool, we might be a blunter, might get some scrappy 12-8s to cool, we're a 20 getter now. Oh my God, terrifying. Is that what you're getting at?
Exactly. I think a good example of that is the fact that even though they had the potentially, as you mentioned, one of the best CK players in the world in Fred, they have still decided to take Niklas on his demons. And he's been tearing everybody a new one on that specific factions as well. So even though they have the Knights package, they've decided that actually, splitting off demons into a separate faction is worth it because we just have that good of a player on it. So they are in a position where they have incredibly skilled players in their specific factions, and that still fits the meta so well. And I think that is especially good of a position to be in.
Stars aligning. Typhus, anything to add, my brother?
No, and I really admire them for taking Drukhari. And weirdly enough, Pumba, you might not know it. You know the guy who's playing the Drukhari?
Not particularly well, no.
You remember that Alpine we won and the team from Tenerife being there?
Oh, yes. He
was the guy you played. You played that guy.
Nice. Good man.
So,
Reaper's Wager.
Reaper's Wager is such a baller choice, and I think I think people are going to be caught off guard again by
too.
Drukhari as they were last year. We have fallen victim to it, for example, against Sweden.
I fully expect to be impressed by Drukhari results because I think they operate in this meta quite well, and they're one of the things that also predators the things that predator this meta. So they're a cute little choice there. But I'm really happy we talked about those three teams. No coincidence. We talked about France, USA, and Germany. If I had to put my money, one of those three is going to win this thing. Is my assumption. I may have a little bit more money on one team more than others.
I think you still need to include Sweden and Poland into those conversations. Especially lately.
We're saving them for part 2, baby, because I was going to say the top 5, though. Who would you say is going to be included in the top 5? And you already jumped the gun. Sweden and Poland are the 2 you have to talk about. And then bang, like the best 5 teams of the event. I think we will have covered. And yeah, Poland, Sweden, 100% contenders for the podium. Absolutely. All right. Easy done. Sorry to cut you off. We're going to wrap this one up. Love you both very much, boys. Can't wait to be hanging out on site doing stats with yous. But okay, it's time. It's time. Which one do you think's winning? Everyone, Babe Ruth, their choice. Pumba.
So I think I have to. I will support the Team USA this year. I think I am friends with most of those guys. I have seen their preparations this year more than ever because I was not involved in Poland. And I think they deserve it so much because every time they've tried so far, they're trying to get the podium, to get the win.
Yeah.
And they've always come like 4th or 5th. And I think this year might be their year.
Yeah, I would not be surprised at all. Typhus, who's winning?
I think it's Germany. I think they're the strongest team they've had in a long while.
I look at Team Germany and I see the most complete player lineup that I've seen from Germany since I've been attending and paying attention. So I think that's a very strong thing. I'm picking France to be the first team in the modern era of the game to go back to back, which I think is the hardest thing to do. It's so freaking hard to win one of these, and the only harder thing to do is to buckle up and go back to back. And so I actually want it to happen because it would be history making. Last year was France's first ever first place at the WTC, and to have them then go on to go back to back with such an incredible community and such a fantastic team would be absolutely like history making, dynasty making. So I want that narrative, I want that story, and so I'll go for France. All right, lovely boys. Time for us to check out and go and record part 2. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode with myself and the lovely Typhus. Please tune in and enjoy your War Games Live coverage of the WTC, which both these 2 incredible gentlemen will be in attendance and assisting me with. And on that note, boys, say your good nights.
Goodbye, everybody.
Well done.
I can